Come on in. We got a pretty full house tonight or this late afternoon, depending where you're at, assuming it's a continental United States. And on that note, tell us where you are. Again, I know we were very well represented geographically, but tell us where you are in the States or overseas. And then if you could, I know we're primarily talking to 26, 27s, 28s. And when I say that, I mean high school classes of 26, 27, 28s. But confirm or deny that for us. Tell us where you are in the journey here. So as well, very helpful. Yes, thank you, thank you. Um, yeah, and we have both coasts represented here. I'm just north of Boston on the North Shore, as we call it here. We have an office in historic Salem, Mass. This is my neck of the woods, and we got a little team of us out here. We got Peggy, a Jersey girl by trade, but she's out in Seattle where she's hung her hat for the past, I don't know, couple decades, right, Peggy? You're muted, pal. Yeah, there you go.
Sorry, I was kind of funky for a few minutes there,
Yeah,
but
you
I think
froze for a second or so, but hopefully that's
yeah, and it was making all these weird noises, but now I'm back. Yeah, yeah, actually 21 years. Kind of crazy.
carried on without you. Carried on without you, bud. Um, awesome. And this is we were just talking in the green room as we do. This is always a challenging, overwhelming process. We say all the time, it's your kids and it's your money. No shit, you're freaked out, right? It's a lot and it's a black box and it's expensive and it lacks transparency. And now we have this layer of these changes happening so quickly. Um, and that's okay, right? That's okay. These are external things that we can't control, but there's going to be some meaningful dominoes that are going to fall here. And the simplest takeaway for you all that are getting ready or that are in the midst of this, you have to stay engaged. You have to pay attention. In kind of in summary, what this administration is doing, and by the way, there's a lot of positives with this. I hate how they're doing it, but there's a lot of positives in the sense that they're saying, "Hey guys, you're on your own here. The federal government is stepping out of. We are not your binky or your safety net for this process. You're on your own." And my hope is that families, parents specifically, will really embrace that and say, okay, message received. We are going to get ourselves educated because nobody's coming through that door to help us. Okay. And we'll talk about that in specifics. But before we go there, my name is Matt Carpenter. I'm the founder of College Aid Pro. Um, Class of 2025, you're the folks right above you guys or above a lot of you guys. That's the 20th class I've guided through this process. So I've been around the moon a couple times here. Peggy's in a similar boat, and in addition to doing this on a professional level, she's been where you guys are right now as a parent. And Peggy, I'll let you introduce yourself, but we like to call her Peggy. We also call her the fairy godmother of financial aid, the budget queen. Here she is, Peggy Keough.
Yeah, I have twins. They graduated from college in 2016. So, wow, it's crazy that that's almost been 10 years. So, I get it. I get where you are. You'll get through it. But, you know, what Matt said, some of this stuff that's flying around now, it just makes it even more apparent. It's always been true that you can't drift through this process. That's why I got into this, because I learned about it years ago, and then I saw my friends and colleagues drifting, because it's a lot to take in. And like Matt said, it's your kids, it's your money, it's the perfect storm of emotion. So and all of our lives are busy, so it's easy to just kind of be, I don't have time for this. And we know the journey. You guys are all, you have juniors and under. Thanks for sharing. We know the journey that you're coming up on, that's happening. So let us guide you on that. It'll make it way less stressful. You'll be able to, if you're married, you'll be able to work with your spouse better and then set expectations for your kids. So that's what gets us out of bed. That's why we're here. So we are happy. This is the first time you're hearing us. Welcome. If it's not, it's good to hear some of this stuff way more than one time, because it's a lot to take in. So let me share my screen here and let's kick this off. So Matt mentioned he is one of the co-founders at College Aid Pro, and if you're new, this truly is our mission. This last line is really what matters here, empowering families to shop smarter for college. So educating you, helping you, like I just said, understand this journey. That's I'm the director of education here. Like that's a big part of what I do. And believe me, kudos to you for being here because it's gonna help you big time. It's gonna support you as you work through this with your child. You might have younger kids, right? In this process as well. So there we are. So everybody received an email today, and we can tell a lot of you already did it. So that's awesome. So you could even have it open on the side as we're presenting tonight. If you haven't, strongly encourage you to go in. Matt will put a link in the chat, set up your free MyCap account. That journey I'm talking about, and we're going to go in with the sample family in a little bit. We take you all the way through building a college list, all the way through paying the bill and the best way to pay the bill. And if you need loans, how does that all work? So it's and the steps in between, financial aid forms and appealing. The whole thing is covered in there. So set up your free account. You can put up to three colleges, get the ball rolling. Super easy. And don't worry as you're answering the onboarding questions. There's not a lot of them, but if you're not sure about an answer, it's okay. Just put your best estimate because you can go in and change all of it once you're in there. And that's going to be kind of the guide for you to get into this whole process. It'll be extremely helpful. Okay. So let's just jump in, and Matt's going to chime in here too. We're talking about financial aid tonight, but we would be remiss if we didn't just talk a little bit about everything that's going on and all the changes. A couple years ago, we had the new FAFSA. That's kind of leveled out. So now we have a new administration that has certain objectives and certain things that they're trying to do. And I gotta say, I don't necessarily agree with everything, like Matt said. Some things will be positive, some things are going to create challenges, but they're moving forward, right? Every day there's another announcement. Not everything will come to fruition. I'm sure you're noticing, stuff gets thrown out, and then the judicial system steps in and says, whoa, we got a hold on this, or we're not, that's not going to happen, or Congress needs to do this, whatever happens. But a key thing to bring up that I'm sure a lot of you know is that the Department of Education, the intention is to shrink that agency, and that's already started, considerably shrunk as far as letting people go, but then moving parts of it to different agencies. So as of Friday, President Trump signed an order to move the student loans over to the Small Business Administration. So Matt's going to chime in here. There's going to be some challenges here. There's certain loans that have been around for quite a long time that the administration of those loans could be a little rocky because everything's changing, moving around. The FAFSA went down for a little bit last week, which was right after there was a big layoff at the Department of Education. We don't think that was a coincidence. They got it back up and running. You guys aren't into the FAFSA yet, but I know we have a lot of 26 families, so that's gonna be on your docket as of October 1. So there's just a lot of moving pieces here. Do you want to chime in there, Matt, before
Yeah, I mean,
we
look,
move on?
again, as Peggy and I literally spend hours talking about this each week, right? Kind of behind the scenes and public facing. But to me, the headlines at the moment are in the short term, college, I think, is going to get a little bit more expensive. Now, it does every single year, right? College inflation raises fast, a lot faster than our inflation, even in this climate. But what's definitely happening is that for those of us that need to borrow, that is going to get more expensive as well, right? So the net of that is that in the short term, so I'm talking 26, 27, 28, maybe some changes happen before that, college is going to get more expensive. And the government is telling us there's going to be less resources. We're not going to be there to help states figure it out. Private sector, come on in. Um, so again, the takeaway is because guess what? This is not all doom and gloom. I'm sure it sounds like it. Everything we're saying, doom and gloom, doom and gloom. No, these colleges, and Peggy's going to tell you exactly what I'm talking about in a second here. They are still going to run their businesses in a similar manner. Okay. So maybe the federal government is going to kind of remove itself. And again, pros and cons there. But it just becomes more important for us to figure out, well, Am I eligible for financial aid? How can I be eligible for more financial aid? Which colleges are most generous? If I'm not, how do I still get discounts? So that's exactly what we're going to talk about, which again is similar to what we'd be talking about even if there weren't these sweeping changes. It's just each of these things are now more important than they were even a year ago, even a month ago.
Yep, 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 very, yep. So, as Matt was just alluding to, out of all the uncertainty that we have right now, what we both feel pretty certain about is the colleges are going to continue to offer discounts off the sticker price, off this cost of attendance, the tuition and fees, room and board, books, travel, the whole enchilada, if you will. And when I say this, this is an example of what I'm talking about. So this is University of Washington and Gonzaga, right? So if you look at their sticker prices, massively different, more than double for Gonzaga. This is from a couple years ago, so it's even higher now. Um, and it's easy to look at this and say, well, we can barely afford UW. Forget about Gonzaga and take it off the list. This family has a student aid index, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, of $30,000. But look at the end of the day, and my border got a little fatter. Look at the end of the day here. The difference is $5,500 instead of over double, right? And this happens all the time. And this is not including loans. So this is what you want to understand. And you want to understand for your family and your child. Like I said, I have twins. It was different for Shannon versus Brennan. They were different kids, different schools, different business plans, if you will, that the colleges have. And most of these universities that your kids are looking at, they're nonprofits on paper, but don't kid yourself, they are big businesses. Net revenue is what they are tracking in their enrollment management departments. It's a big deal. So if you don't understand any of that, you're kind of falling by the wayside, and you can become just collateral damage, honestly, and you could be leaving tens of thousands of dollars on the table. So that's what we're here to help you understand and start to peel away the onion on how this works. I might have some really good new metaphors tonight, Matt, that I haven't used
You're
before.
clearly on fire. I mean,
I'm on a roll here.
I don't want to break up the no hitter here, but
Okay, so let's talk about this. So I said before, all these colleges are offering discounts, right? So how do they do it? They can offer need-based grants. So as the name hints, you have to have financial need. And let's face it, more people than 10 years ago with the same incomes, even inflated, um, have need, because I was just talking to a mom the other day and I pulled up Pepperdine, and in our software it's over $103,000. Like I even jump back because that's the most expensive one I've seen so far. It's a crazy, crazy high number. So don't live in the world until you know that you're not eligible for need-based aid, because you very well could be at certain schools even if you make a nice living. So if you are, the colleges, the state, and the federal government in the form of Pell Grants can step in and offer these need-based grants. The lion's share of this comes from the institutions, the colleges, the institutional grants. It's free money. You don't have to pay it back. So you want to grab as much of that as you can. The middle bucket is also free money, merit-based scholarships. So this is the flip side. It's not based on your finances. It's based on your child. It's based on their grades, test scores, athletics. Some colleges have leadership scholarships, whatever it happens to be. That's another form of discount. And some kids get both, some just get one. Just depends on the college, depends on the student. And then the last bucket we call self-help. So this is loans, work study. Work study is basically your child getting a job. Right now, the government offers that as a form of need-based aid, and they pay half the wage. Loans are part of a lot of people's strategy. Matt mentioned them earlier. The key thing about loans is that it's a smart, reasonable amount of debt that you're signing up for. So that's how the discounting is happening. So when I showed you the UW and Gonzaga, that was a combination of need-based grants and merit for that student at Gonzaga that brought that price down so much. Okay, so let's talk about the need-based aid. So they take this cost of attendance. You submit financial aid forms, either the FAFSA, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. The FAFSA and the CSS profile, or just the FAFSA. And this number gets calculated that's called the Student Aid Index, SAI. That's a new term The old term was expected family contribution, and some colleges are still using that term. So that's why it's still on the slide. And basically, this is what the colleges use in this equation. They take what they cost, say it's 80,000, you have a $50,000 SAI, and they say, oh, well, you have 30,000 of need. That SAI/EFC is not the maximum you're going to pay. The colleges don't dig in and say, let's see what this family can really afford, right? They're not, I say this all the time, they're not interested in if and when you retire. They just look at this and that's how they decide if you have need or not. That's pure and simple. If the school costs 80 and some of you are looking at your MyCap account that you've created and you look at the top and there's two SAIs up there, a federal one and an institutional, yours might be say 110,000 for one of them or both of them. You obviously wouldn't have any need because 80,000 even at $100,000 school, right? I don't think there's any schools that cost 110,000 yet. Pepperdine was 103 and change. So you wouldn't have need. And we're going to talk about what that looks like if you truly are not eligible for need-based aid anywhere. So that's the pretty simple formula. You got to submit the forms so that you can be eligible for need-based aid. So let's talk about this SAI and just not totally in the weeds how it's calculated, but just to give you a good idea. So there's basically two big buckets. There's assets and there's income. And it's student and parents for both, okay? So let's hit the assets first. The biggest takeaway is the assets that are looked at in the calculation are your non-retirement assets. So if you have balances in a 401k, a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, 403b, like if you're a teacher, you have a big pension account, those are all retirement. So you don't disclose those on financial aid forms on the FAFSA when they ask for your net worth of investments. That's a big mistake a lot of people make. Those are off the table, but pretty much everything else is on the table. So that means you have stocks, you have bonds, you have CDs, checking, savings. Another big bucket is 529s, college savings accounts. There's prepaid tuition plans, not as popular as they used to be, but that's a form of a 529, a college savings account. Typically, if you have a 529, the way I would guess you have it set up is that one of the parents is the owner and then the child is the beneficiary, your student that's going to go to college someday, right? That is an asset of the parent if the parent is the owner. It's not a gift to the beneficiary. You can take it back at any time. That's the reasoning. And that's actually a good thing because parent assets are assessed up to 5.64%. Student assets are at 20 or 25%, depending on the college. So big difference. So you want to make sure if you have a 529, that goes in your bucket of non-retirement money. If grandma or grandpa, which is really common, have a 529 for your child, it's not even on the radar because they're not in your household. So that wouldn't be disclosed. Just anybody that's in the household is what's going to be disclosed. The third bullet over on the right, the UGMA or UTMA, those are custodial accounts. Those were the only game in town years ago. 529s didn't exist. You were saving for a minor. That's how you did it. That actually is an asset of the student, of your child, because unlike the 529s, it is an irrevocable gift to that child. There are ways, there is one major way to get that out of your kid's name. I'm not going to go through the strategy here because you don't want to just do it. You have to make sure it makes sense for you to do it. There's some win for you if you do it. There's tax ramifications. You can't look at it in a silo, but I'm just planting that seed. If you have accounts like that, it can really sting and push you potentially out of need-based aid eligibility. And there is a strategy to get it into the parent's name. So just keep that in mind. If you have a joint account with your child, which is super common when they're minors, put it in your bucket, not in their bucket. Again, much better to be in your bucket for the SAI calculation. And then lastly, real estate. So most schools in the country do not look at your primary home, the home you live in. If you don't rent and you own your home and the bank probably owns part of it, or maybe you're fortunate enough you own your home and you don't have a mortgage, The equity in your property, meaning the market value minus a mortgage or a home equity line of credit, that's your equity. That can be fair game at some schools, your primary home, but not most of them. And we'll touch on this in a few minutes. But secondary real estate, any other real estate you have, if you have a condo in Maui, you have vacant land where you go hunting, all of that is other real estate. That's all on the table. The equity in that real estate. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't matter if your real estate's outside of the country, if you own it and your whatever share of your ownership is, that's going to be disclosed on financial aid forms and be part of that SAI. It's appealable, but it's part of it. And then the last thing about assets is they are assessed, if you want to be this exact, literally the day you hit submit. So the good news is if you're hearing some things, you have time to spend down assets or do some strategizing to get your assets lower if that's something that's applicable to your family, to get that SAI lower so that you can get more or be eligible for need-based aid. So that's the asset side of it. The other
Sorry,
side,
Peggy. Let
yeah,
me pause because we got a couple of repeat questions here, like we usually do, and they're good ones. One of them that we hit on later, but I'll hit on it now because we got a few of them. I'm a small business owner. Is that considered part of the SAI? The short answer is yes, and this is a huge challenge. Even if you're a sole proprietor, that's a one man band. One of the new changes that we really don't like, and this was the previous administration. This is now what, 3 years old now. They consider, and they being the federal formula in general, the net assets of the business to be fair game essentially, and they're going to ask you to value your business. So this is mission critical how you report this, and of course it's massively subjective, right? So we just have to get this right. So this is one of these scenarios where we're like, talk to us before you submit anything. Let us stare at what you got going on and be able to make some firm recommendations for you. And the other kind of repeat questions we got were around, okay, parent assets versus student assets. And just to kind of repeat what you said, Peggy, even if you got 10,000 bucks in the student savings account, that's not a huge number, but it is enough to move the needle. In my opinion, a meaningful amount on your SAI, on your need-based financial aid eligibility, where if we put our name on that account as parents, now we can just report that money as our asset. And yes, parent assets are considered, but with way less scrutiny, way less they look at a way smaller percentage of it than if it's in the kid's name. So these are some of the things that we can control that we have to get right because all these kind of micro decisions lead up to, having a successful end result here.
yep, yep. Okay, so now let's talk about the income part of this. Parental income by far is the biggest driver here. Okay. If you have $5 million in a non-retirement account, maybe not, but for most families, your income as a parent is the biggest driver. It's mostly based on your adjusted gross income. There are some throw-ins that we call untaxed income. Those have been reduced pretty significantly on the federal formula with the FAFSA changes a couple years ago. But a key difference here is unlike the assets where it's your real time, game time value, it's a 2 year look back. And we call that prior year. President Obama, which is a while ago, put this into place. So I know we have 26, 27, and 28 parents on here. So you can see on the slide, if you've got a junior right now, the tax year you're going to be reporting on is last year. So it's a done deal, right? Um, but if you have a sophomore, you are in the year, right? We're only in Q1. So don't do things that are going to increase your income. Of course, if you get a bonus, you get a raise, you get a promotion, these are all wonderful things and that's great, right? It's going to sting a little bit, but in the end it's better. It's better to get raises and do well financially. I'm a financial planner by background, so trust me on that. But some people do things like create capital gains and take distributions out of their 401k, and then you've got to explain this when you get to the point that you're filling out financial aid forms, and then the colleges inflate your SAI. So, these are the years where you want to have that adjusted gross income as low as possible. And there are some ways to lower it by doing certain savings for college ahead of time that some colleges will allow you to do, and it won't get added back into your SAI. So there's strategies here. So 2-year look back based on adjusted gross income. Students are looked at as well, but you can see here on the slide on the federal formula, which again, all but about 250 colleges in this country use. If for this coming school year, a student can make over 11.5 and it's a wash. So for most kids, even if they're working throughout the school year and they have a great summer job, they're usually not making more than that. So it's assessed at 50% if they're over 11.510, but most kids aren't. So it doesn't really move the needle. Or for most families, it's just not even a thing for the FAFSA schools. So that's the need based. So if you're looking at your MyCap dashboard, and like I said earlier, you're seeing some pretty high numbers for your two SAIs, and you're realizing, yeah, I don't think we're going to be eligible for a lot of need based aid. Matt and I have worked with literally thousands of families through the years that was the case. It still doesn't mean you can afford 100,000, or honestly you want to pay 100,000 even if you can afford it. So that's when that other middle bucket comes in that I mentioned at the beginning, merit aid. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt to chat about merit aid.
Awesome. Thanks, Peggy. A lot of these questions I got is like, how can I find out what my SAI is? What about my SAI at the CSS profile schools? How would I know which colleges are going to give me scholarships and how they're awarded? I'm about to show you that in 2 seconds. And again, they're all in the platform that I've put into the chat a few times. So I want to make sure that you guys take advantage of that. If nothing else, that should be, what you engage in tonight. So Peggy just said it, right? What if we're not getting need-based aid or we're not getting a meaningful amount? We don't want to start paying 100 grand a year, right? And even if we could, we don't want to. We want to get discounts. The most obvious way, merit-based scholarships. Again, bear with me for less than 5 minutes here. I'm going to show you exactly how to find out which schools are going to give you scholarships, how much. Et cetera, et cetera. But a couple talking points before I do. Number one, some of these schools, even if you're not eligible for need-based aid and you're just seeking scholarships, you have to do the financial aid applications to even be considered for these, right? I always use NYU as an example, one of the most popular schools in the country. They have scholarships, right? But they won't consider you for those, or they won't consider your student for those unless you've done both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. We always flag this because, and of course, they're not the only school that falls into that category. Because I think a lot of families that aren't eligible for need-based aid or assume they're not eligible for need-based aid, and by the way, do not assume, they leave money on the table, right? By just saying, no, we're not going to do the applications. We don't need to. There's no point, etc. Please don't make that mistake. Almost in the same breath, I think it's important to note not every college offers scholarships, right? So now there's about 100 schools in the country. Scholarships don't exist. Nobody goes to an Ivy League school on a scholarship, not one person, okay? If your neighbor said my kid got a scholarship to go to Dartmouth, that's not true. They got need-based financial aid if they're not paying full sticker price. Same goes for MIT or Amherst or Williams, Bowdoin, Colby, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, about 100 colleges. So again, just another tidbit that you want to be aware of. And something that we say all the time, guys, these are private businesses. Let's be clear, right? Peg said at the beginning, yes, they don't pay taxes. Okay. But they're private businesses and they each run their business differently. And as consumers, we have to know, well, for the colleges that we're targeting, how do they run their business? Because some of the other questions we got, great questions, by the way. Well, do we apply for scholarships just by applying to the school, or are there separate applications and requirements as well? Depends what business we're applying to, right? Some colleges just apply to the school. You're applying for every scholarship. Other colleges, not even close. So that's where we have to know, okay, of the 10, 12 schools we're applying to, exactly what do we need to do in order to make sure we're maximizing our odds for getting the deepest discounts. And the last bullet I'm just going to tease here before we get in and kind of do some case study stuff here. Stick with that theme. And if there's one theme that kind of resonates with you tonight, I hope it's that this is a business. This is a business transaction. This is one of the biggest investments we're ever going to make as a family. I'm going to approach it as such. I promise you, I guarantee you, I can say without beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is how the colleges approach it. Okay. They are very sophisticated, well-run organizations, businesses, etc. Okay. So as the consumer, we usually don't have this hat on, okay? And it's such a huge disadvantage, okay? Any big investment, we're creating leverage for ourselves. When I went to go buy, buy a home, I knew I wasn't going to take the first offer, right? Just like none of you guys did. You go to buy a new car, you're not taking the first offer. But we don't even think about that when it comes to, applying to college, which I promise you, burn that in your brains that we're never going to accept the first offer. But it starts now. It starts now when you're in a junior in high school and a sophomore in high school, and you're building that list of colleges. We have to have leverage. All of the families we work with will end up applying to some colleges we have zero intention of actually going to. Okay, but we want to make sure we have those competing offers. Okay, um, and that happens now, right? That happens now in kind of the list building phase. And Peg, you might have to scold the audience and tell them to put the questions in the uh, in the Q&A.
Okay. Yeah. All right, guys. Yeah, definitely put. I'll
I thought you were
definitely
gonna
put
do
them
your
in the
scary
Q and A.
voice. God, you got soft on me, West Coast girl.
I'm busy in the Q and A. I
Okay,
didn't
all right.
even notice the chat. I've been
I'm
heads
just
down
that,
in the Q and A.
and that's why I share that, guys. We're not ignoring you if you're in the chat and you probably came on late or whatever. Please put the questions in the Q&A because we're getting a ton of great questions, and we that's where we focus and we're able to kind of pick them off as best we can. So look at if you haven't set up your account already, guys, please do it now. I am putting the link in here again. Okay, do it now. This is going to answer 50% of the questions that have been in the chat. What's my SAI? Right? Guess what? To further confuse you, there's actually two different SAIs, right? Schools that just require the FAFSA, they use, which is most colleges in the country, they use the federal methodology. Some colleges, here's three front and center, right? Boston College, Columbia, Tulane, and these types of schools, of course, I'm overgeneralizing and simplifying. Most of them use the what's called the institutional methodology, okay? The institutional SAI. And it's very common, just like this family, that there's a range, okay? Now, this is a family just, average income, average assets, family of four, lives just outside of Boston. Why is there a range? Two reasons here. Number one, they own their home, okay, and they have a meaningful amount of home equity, um, which some of these colleges that use this formula consider to varying degrees, but not all of them. That's why, the most affordable college for this family is going to be Columbia. Okay. The $103,000 school is going to be $20,000. It's going to be more affordable than the state flagship university. It's going to be half. It's going to be half. This is not a weird case, guys. This is not an anomaly. Well, why is BC so much going to be $30,000 more a year than Columbia? Well, this family, I just said it. Their home's worth about 600. They owe about 200 on it. You know what Boston College says? Awesome. That's a $400,000 checking account. Okay, that's how they calculate it. Whereas Tulane is somewhere in between here, right? A lot of families that are cost conscious, they tell their kids, are you crazy? You're not applying to these, 80, 90, $100,000 schools. You're only applying to the state schools. Guess what? You want to go to UC Santa Barbara? Is it heaven on earth? You better freaking believe it. But if you're in an out-of-state family, you're paying full rack rate. I don't care how brilliant your kid is. I don't care if you have little to no resources. Okay, you want to go to a UC school, you're paying 80 grand. Okay, full stop. So that strategy of like, well, kids, you're just applying to state schools, that's outdated. Okay, that's outdated, and it can actually have the exact opposite um, impact. And let me just, I want to show you a couple things here. Throw out some actual colleges that you guys are considering, or maybe you're going to tour, right? If you have a spring break, you're going to tour some schools, maybe you just toured some schools. If you're curious to see your alma mater, and actually, I'll tell you to put these in the chat. Put these in the chat. Okay, I will be looking here, not questions, and we will kind of go look at a few schools and see, well, how do they do business? How do they do in terms of discounts? I just saw two Chicago schools. I'll put them both in here. So first, I'll put in Loyola Chicago. Okay, and let's go see. And now again, if Peggy and I have our wish someday, one of our dreams professionally is that before families even go tour a campus, they know exactly what it's going to cost them, not just year one, but over the course of 4 years next to their budget, and they know, can we afford it or not before we tour it, right? And because we say all the time, don't go test driving Maseratis and Aston Martins if we can only afford, right, a Camry. So we're not going to pay full sticker price at Loyola. We're going to pay 50 grand and change. And well, why? right? You can click on any college to see exactly how and what discounts you're going to get. And for every college in the country, we have every single scholarship that they offer, the qualifications for each. And we're number one rated college planning software because we're going to tell you, well, what is your kid actually going to get at this particular college? Okay. And then again, there's more reasons for the why. Well, why is my kid getting this? Well, here's their average GPA, here's their average test scores, and obviously, here's how your kid ranks, right? And within your profiles, you could say, well, my kid got a 24 the first time they took their ACT. What if it goes up to a 28? And in real time, we'll repopulate how that will impact your um, admissions. I saw Northwestern in there, right? Another, great Chicago school here. Where did we go here? Northwestern, right? And look at this, $100,000 school. We're going to get a big discount there, but this is closer to Boston College. Why? Actually, I'll give you a great example here. Let's go University of Chicago. If my to just kind of show you a great example of how schools that are on the surface so comparable just have different business models. Okay. Look at you, Chicago, almost identical sticker price. It's going to be 18,000 versus 56,000. Why? It's back to that home equity piece. Northwestern, they're like a BC. You own your home, perfect. That's a savings account as far as we're concerned. You, Chicago, right? Not that way at all. So let's just say, for example, though, let's just say, oh, whoops, I want to go back in here. And this is something that we want families to leverage as you're building this list of schools. And let's just say that you had a really high SAI. You set up your account, and right now you're looking at your platform and it's saying $120,000 SAI, i.e., we're not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid. But I want to go find out who's going to give me a scholarship and how much. But I also want to marry that with admissions criteria. And we got dozens of filters here. I'll just use a couple for an example. So let's say we know we want to go to a 4-year school. We know we probably want a smaller environment. We want to be at least a drive away from home. And, we want to major in whatever, bio. Okay. I can go put that criteria in there and say, just go rank order that admissions preferences based on who's going to give my kids the most in scholarships, right? And maybe, Wheaton wasn't on our list, but geez, they're going to give us 42 grand regardless of my income. And, Hobart, amazing, beautiful school in upstate New York, is going to give us 38. Clarkson, awesome engineering, school, or that's kind of their sweet spot. They're going to give us 40 grand off, regardless. That's interesting, even if we're putting these on our list as leverage. Okay. Now, if we are eligible for financial aid, I could sort just based on that. Okay. Now, and here we go. Nobody gets into MIT, but here's some other colleges that are amazing with need-based financial aid, and again, maybe are a little bit more, within our range. Okay, as far as admissions are concerned. Okay, and Peggy, let's do at least like a super speed version of the affordability piece here, because again, guys, we just need to get better. I'm pointing the fingers at me and our firm and kind of our stakeholders at coaching families on it's not just what you're paying at these schools, but especially if you have to borrow, and especially as these rates are going up, how much more expensive college is when it's not front of mind, right? So Peggy, just kind of talk through this
Yeah,
part of the plan.
yeah. So and like I said, we take you through this whole thing. So this affordability piece is saying, okay, well, we've dialed in a net cost for 1 year, but it's a 4-year investment, most kids, right? Hopefully not more than 4 years. So we take that number, we put in inflation, we multiply it by four. We also take into account, like if it's at Columbia, and you have a junior and a sophomore in high school where you're going to have 3 crossover years, we take that into account because Columbia will take that into account, and all of a sudden you could be eligible for need-based aid when you weren't. So it's not just a multiply by four, you know, Excel formula with inflation thrown in. We build in all those nuances. So then we take that 4-year number. Like if you look at Columbia, it's 86,571. The other thing we do in our software that is I love is that we say, how much can you afford for a year? And we build that in. That's your budget. For this family, it's $109,000. And we say, all right, well, this is your 4-year net cost. This is what you told us you could bring to the table. What's the delta? At Columbia, it's zero. Like that's a win. At Tulane, it's about 61,000. But UC Santa Barbara is outrageous, right? You're talking about over $250,000 in loans. Like you want to see that. To Matt's point, if you have a sophomore, you want to see that now and say, you know what, honey, that's not affordable, right? It's very much easier to have that conversation now than when your child gets in second semester senior year. Then we actually get even more granular, and this is good for kids to see, but I think also parents is, it sounds like, well, yeah, that's not that bad, 62,000 in loans. Well, let's just really talk about what that is. Over 10 years, it's $679. We have an assumed interest rate, of course. And over 25 years, it's $394. That's not crazy, but we want you to see that. At BC, the numbers are much higher. It's over 1,200 a month. So depending on what that student graduates with, comp sci is in here, so over 7,100 net, that's doable, but a kid who graduates with a writing degree, maybe not, right? My daughter in social work, maybe not, right? So this is the kind of stuff that you want to think about, and you don't have to go make spreadsheets. We've got it all here for you. And trust me, you will be happy that you did. Someone asked what that caution means. Is what we do is we say ideal is no loans. That's obviously the best. Great is if you take out just the federal direct student loans. That we're not going to get in the weeds on that, but that's $27,000 over 4 years. Yeah. And then good is over the 4 years having a loan balance that's equal to what you would make for 1 year, the student. And then caution is anything over that. So that's what that means. That's a great question. Somebody put in the chat, but I still answered it. I'm super
Thank
nice
you.
today.
You
But
going soft, girl.
yeah, I mean, I know this is a lot, but trust me, it's all right in front of you, right? And this helps you truly build the list. Taking all this into account, most people, they're reacting after. They're not proactive and they have a big gulp when they see how much things cost. You don't, that's just not, doesn't have to be that way. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a dive here into the two financial aid forms. Class of 2026 parents, like I said, this is coming up October 1. It'll be here before you know it. So both forms should go live October 1. The FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, we've already talked about it. Every school, almost every school in the country requires this. Most of them only require it. That's how we get the SAI calculation. We talked about prior year. A key thing to realize with the FAFSA, if you are divorced or separated, is only the custodial parent, one biological parent, is submitting it with the child. The custodial parent is the parent who provides the most financial support on a year look back from when you're submitting the form. So if you're a family that's divorced and you're 50-50, that's a planning opportunity. Figure out which parent is most advantageous to submit that form. If you can work together amicably, make sure that parent, it could be literally $2 more of support for that year look back. You're following the rules, you're being honest, you're putting your best foot forward. Congress made that a gray area. Some families, it's not 50-50, but you've got time. It's March. You have time to figure out by October, November, whenever you're submitting these forms, that you can pick the custodial parent potentially. Some families it's too, it's not even close and it is what it is. That's most advantageous. Keep in mind, if you are remarried, your new spouse is part of the mix as a custodial parent. So it's the household. So that can throw a wrench in it. They don't just look at the biological parents on the FAFSA if you're remarried. Um, anybody who's going to be a part of the FAFSA needs to get what's called a Federal Student Aid ID, FSA ID. Super easy. You see the link there. You go in, you create a username and password, you create some security questions. Get it done before October 1st. You don't have to do it tonight. Goes over to the Social Security Administration. They verify that you are who you are. Keep those credentials because you're going to need them every year. Your child's going to need it, and whoever is submitting the form. And we'll get in the weeds on that on webinars when it gets closer. They're called contributors, people that are submitting their financial information on a student's FAFSA. and it can be a little confusing who's a contributor. So we'll get into that. But if you're married filing jointly, one parent gets it, and the student always gets it. Okay. So that's the FAFSA. Now, there are about 250 colleges, mostly private. There's a few publics thrown in there that require a second form, not in lieu of the FAFSA, but in addition to it. So this is called the CSS profile. It's administered by College Board. So if your kids have done AP, PSAT, SAT, all of that is College Board. You don't need a special login. You just use your child's credentials. This also goes live October 1. There's some key differences on this form. One, most of these schools, and Matt kind of talked about this when he talked about Northwestern and BC and Columbia, most of them look at that primary home that I talked about at the beginning that you live in. They look at it as a liquid asset in varying degrees. Columbia doesn't, Chicago doesn't, but like Northwestern and BC, like Matt said, it's kind of like a savings account that you can just pull and pay for your kids' college, right? That doesn't mean you have to agree with that and you have to do that, but you want to know that, and we have it built into the software. If you're divorced or separated, both biological parents are involved here. Then the custodial parent, by the definition I shared, will submit the CSS with your child. The non-custodial parent will submit something called a non-custodial profile. They both go to College Board. It's private. Both families are looked at, both parents are looked at. So if you both make a nice living, that's going to be a higher number that they're going to think you can pay for a year with two sets of parents coming in. Not all the CSS schools look at both parents. We have that built into the software, but the lion's share of them do. Business owners, Matt hit this, both forms. They're going to ask, the CSS is going to get in the weeds on your business. They're going to look at your tax returns. They're going to look at all the expenses you claim that Uncle Sam's okay with and they might throw out. They're going to look at that. And on the FAFSA, they're going to ask you your business value. You got to strategize so that you don't overestimate values there. And I've had a couple of these, this next bullet, kind of heartbreaking this year, of families that are divorced where it's really not safe for that child to be communicating with their non-custodial parent. Um, and so there is something called a non-custodial waiver, because if you don't submit both parents, they just won't give you any of their money, right? Unless you let the college know, hey, this is the reason why my child can't be reaching out to their dad or their mom. It's not physically safe, it's not emotionally safe. And there are some, like I said, I've had a few this year. They're really valid reasons, and it's rough. It's rough to even write these letters and send them, but it's well worth the family's time, because if they do waive, which many cases, if it's valid, they will, then they're just going to look at the custodial parent, because the non-custodial parent is not safe for that student to be communicating with. So just keep that in mind, and that's something we can guide you on, because it can get pretty rough. Like I'm reviewing therapist letters for people just to make sure they're sharing this the way the college wants to hear it, so that they'll waive that requirement. So some key differences there with the CSS profile. So it's a lot longer form. The FAFSA is shorter now with the changes. It's a bear. And like Billy Rabbit, who one of Matt's best friends, our teddy bear of our team, I like to call him. He says, you're filling out the FAFSA, you get a beer, you get one cocktail. When you're filling out the CSS, you might need a little bit more than one. It's a little crazy. And this is just for parents, of course. I'm not talking to students right now, but kidding, of course, but kind of not. It's a bear. There's a lot of questions, and it gets really confusing, and it's pretty invasive, but it's kind of the rite of passage. You got to submit it if you want to get the need-based institutional grants, and a lot of these private schools are really good at meeting need if you have need. So that's how the two forms work. So I will turn it back over to you to wrap up here, Matt.
Okay, great. And I
And
make
hold tight, everybody, because a few
yeah.
people have asked in the Q&A, like, do you have a one-on-one concierge service?
Yeah.
We're gonna get there soon. So
Yeah, so
hold
let me
tight.
and I'll get there in just a minute. I just want to reemphasize this point, and then I'm going to make sure that you guys are walking away from tonight with some action items, right? That's our job, is to keep you engaged, and we'll let you know just how we support families. If you're a DIYer, you know who you are, right? And we'll kind of put you in the right spot there, and you're off to the races. And you, again, you do your own taxes. You use TurboTax. That's us, right? Just use us. If you're somebody that kind of doesn't say, "Hey, just somebody take over this freaking thing for me," I don't have time, or I don't want to screw it up, or I got a complicated situation. I'll talk about what that looks like as well. But this is just a reminder to re-emphasize: we are never accepting that first offer. Okay, we've done over $1 million in additional appeal money just this year for the class 2025. Over $1 million. Couple cases where you know $52,000 more from Boston University, $47,000 more from Tufts. I think we had another Middlebury. I know USC. We had some huge victories. So I'm talking. That is not the precedent I want to set. Right? These are the exceptions. I probably shouldn't even share those, right? Most folks, when you appeal successfully, we're getting another five, $10,000. But you got to keep in mind that's tax free. That's times 4 years. So even if we're getting 5 grand, right, that's another 20 grand, and maybe all of a sudden the school that was out of reach all of a sudden becomes in reach. So we just can't say enough times, guys, do not accept that first offer. Now, listen, there's a method to the madness. You're not, this is a used car salesman, right? Or you're not negotiating with a used car salesman. As a matter of fact, if you use the word negotiate, that's the end of your negotiation. I can promise you that. We have a lot of financial aid counselors a part of our team. If you go on our website, you'll see the director of financial aid at Harvard, MIT, former director at USC. So we get that inside baseball, right? That says, well, how do we go back to your school and do better than you guys offered initially, right? So there's certainly a level of sophistication there, but step one for where you're at in the process is build leverage on the list, create competition, and just know you're not accepting that first offer. Okay. Peggy, if I could, let me just share my
Sure.
screen here. So a couple things I want to walk you through. The first thing, and if you can just share the landing page link, Peggy, please, I will.
Yep.
So again, I told you there's two, not that I'm probably oversimplifying here, but there's two basic ways that we support people. Those are the ones that want kind of our comprehensive services. We call them our wake me up when it's over packages. We do this for the financial piece, the admissions piece, or both. Now, the admissions piece for the class 2026, where most of our admissions counselors can't, they're full for the class 2026, but I know we have availability for 27. We and 28. We still have one counselor that has room for 26s if that's something you're interested in. But just to give you a brief overview of what this looks like, and then again, what you have to do, guys, at a minimum, go talk to one of our experts. If for our live registrants, if you book it by midnight tonight, you talk to one of our experts for free. They're gonna just kind of the first, just give you a diagnosis. Here's where you're at. You're eligible for financial aid. You're not eligible for financial aid. You can get your SAI down. No, you can't get your SAI down. Here's the types of schools that are going to be willing to discount a family like you. So they'll immediately level set and then tell you how can we support you. If they think, and it's not going to be all of you, and don't believe me, they mean no offense if they don't think you're a good fit for our comprehensive services. I'll just talk to you in a second about what our kind of DIY support looks like. But it's a little bit more about us, right? We've been around for a long time, especially collectively as a team. We've helped a lot of people. Here's some of the logos for that are a part of our team, right? We get to leverage the former director of financial admissions at BU, right? The current directors at Harvard and MIT, and so it's you have a massive competitive advantage from both an admissions and I'm this is my first language, but I think especially a financial standpoint. On average, we save families $70,000 that work with us, right? Full stop. That's a conservative number. That is a number we can stand tall on. That is data driven. Um, we're going to update that soon, but that is something that we are completely comfortable in holding ourselves out as being able to deliver on. Okay. And by the way, these are just our wake me up when it's over financial aid packages. Again, I'll talk about DIY in a second here. We save folks a significant amount of time. That's time you get back with your kid. Folks that engage with our admissions packages, again, data supports that you're 3 times more likely to get in your top choice. So, and again, we're obviously happy to kind of unpack where these numbers come from. I'm not going to do it tonight, but you can talk about that if when you talk to us. Our financial aid services, what do we get? What do you get for that? Unlimited one-on-one access with the expert that you're working with. Okay, unlimited one-on-one access from now until your kid moves into the dorm. It doesn't matter if they're a freshman, sophomore, junior in high school from now until they move into the dorm. We're going to build that list with you. So you're going to have that leverage. You're going to know exactly what these schools are going to cost you, who's going to offer financial aid, who's going to offer scholarships, who competes with one another. We complete all the financial aid applications for you. So think we worry about who needs what, where, when, how. Okay. The how is the really important part there. One of we say this all the time internally. Imagine what the IRS would think if there was no such thing as CPAs or the just kind of or there was no softwares like TurboTax, right? This is one of the magic powers that the colleges have for most consumers, right? We just work with a small percentage of the population. Our families pay a lot less, right, to go to college, and a lot of it is based on that. How do you present your situation? How do you present your business? How do you present your home equity? Your divorce separated, right? Who should complete the FAFSA, right? How do we negotiate for more money? Of course, we don't use that word, but we're on the front lines doing those for you, right? For our clients, like we are right now. Um, and then finally, how do we pay this bill? It's going to be harder than ever. The federal government is not going to offer loans anymore to parents. I don't think. That's one man's opinion here. I'm going to be proven right or wrong in the coming months, in year or two here. But then it's just going to be the private sector. We're going to let a lot of wolves into the hen house. And so those decisions are going to get a lot more important, and a lot more expensive, in my opinion. So again, yes, you're making an investment in us, but we're saying you're going to get that back many, 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 many times over. And then admissions is kind of comparable, where you're working, but I would say maybe that's not the right way to say it. It's comparable in the sense that for our financial aid services, we are providing support to the parent. Of course, the students along for the ride too, but it's really the parents that we're talking about. Again, we're getting tax returns and doing these financial aid applications and thinking about how to position our business. These types of conversations. The admissions is really our admissions expert working with your student. Okay, there's legitimate, tangible value in that. They're just managing this, so you don't have to, right? Okay, what are the deadlines? Have we, you guys they should already have right now the framework of their essay started. They should already have a working list of schools, right? It's our admissions experts that are managing that. And it's so freaking competitive now that it's not just about having great grades and great test scores and great extracurriculars. How do you package your asset that is the student to these colleges, right? I like to use that comp that I learned from the admissions folks. It's like, it's not just about having this great house that they've built. They've built this house over 18 years, but how do they stage it? How does it show up on the internet? That's what's going to get the house sold, right? Um, and again, essays more important than ever, especially after the Supreme Court decision. Some of these colleges that have all these supplemental applications in addition to the Common App, let us manage that for you. So there's an admissions package that takes care of that for folks that just want that help and think they're all set financially. And then obviously there's a lot of families that have an appetite for both, right? Yes, I want the help financially. Yes, I want the help with admissions for my kid. So talk to us, right? Talk to us, and we can help you figure out, well, what level of support does your family need? But if you're looking at this going, I would never invest a service like this. I'm a DIYer, change my own oil. I'm the one that's going to tile the bathroom, when it's time. I'm putting this link in the chat right now because you won't find this on the internet. Okay. If you go on the internet right now and you want the premium version of our software, right? So I showed you that earlier, and you want to be able to put, unlimited schools into this, and you want to be able to put, go to the advanced search and sort who's gonna give you the most money, scholarships, financial aid, both, right? You'll find it to be $149. But this, if you go through this link, that again, I'll put in the chat again here, and you sign up, it'll be $25 to sign up, and then it's $9.99 a month, so $10 a month essentially. So make that $25 investment. Okay, test us out. If you think it stinks, you're out $25. Or if you really think it stinks, talk to us, and maybe you can sell us on giving your getting your money back. But just about everybody stays with us through this process because in addition to the premium version of the software, um, you have bi-weekly office hours. So every other Monday, you have a group of our experts that are just there to answer your questions, right? Virtually. Every other Thursday on that opposite weeks, we have member-only workshops where we do just kind of like inside baseball, content. So you know who you are. If you're the DIYer, make the $25 investment in your kid, in your family. Let us go prove value. If we don't, tell us to get lost, right? If you're not the DIYer or even if you're thinking about it, what you should do is sign up for this free consult with one of our experts, right? It'll likely be, I guess we don't have their pictures there, but it'll likely be Kevin Murphy or Jason Sloan or Dan Maga. The three of those guys just have a ton of experience, and we meet as a team actually twice a week, me and that group. Not everybody's going to just if you're not a good fit for our comprehensive services, they're not even going to really talk to you about that outside of answering your questions. They're going to say, just book an hour with us or go, go join the club. But at least take some action tonight. Take some action. Book some free time, or sign up for the club if you know you're a DIYer, you know who you are, and you're never gonna consider that. But that's do something, right? Don't do nothing. Stay engaged with us here in some capacity. Peggy, what am I missing? I know we got to jump here.
Yeah, just basically, I mean, I talked about it at the beginning, like just do something, be engaged. If it's $25 joining the club, you're in our ecosystem, you're going to keep getting invited to stuff. If you realize, wow, this is a lot, I need some help with financial aid forms, we'll step in and help you. We're here for whatever way, whatever price point and whatever comfort level you have with getting support. And really, it's a great analogy. I just finished my taxes with TurboTax, right? Um, I can't imagine doing my taxes without TurboTax. But some people are like my sister. She's like, screw it, I'm going to the CPA. I don't
That's
even
me.
know what a Schedule A is.
That's me.
When I talk to her, I mean, I'm a nerd, so I like tax stuff, so I do it. But most people don't, right? So it's a lot, and it's just like I said earlier, with all of this new stuff, it's added another layer of complexity, and with things being uncertain that have been around for decades, it's just stay engaged. You'll be really proud of yourself and happy you did, no matter what level you engage with us. Just do it, like Nike says. Isn't that a Nike thing?
Look at this girl on fire with her sayings tonight, there, Peggy. All right. Well, yeah. Look at thanks for tuning in, guys, and look at you're honestly on at least second base just for like signing up for these things and just listening even a little
Yeah.
bit, just like and even if that's as much as you can get yourself to do tonight, just stay at least keep paying attention, right? Pay attention to the stuff we put out, and again, you will thank yourselves for it because this year, just like every year, right, with the class 2025, and I'm sure this is just recency bias, because I probably say this every single year, but it's like, and Peggy will tell you this, if you hear how many times a day we hear, oh my God, if only I just started a year ago, I heard you guys say this, I heard you say this, and I put it off and put it off and put it off. Um, don't do that, right? Learn from these guys in front of you. It's a competitive advantage. You will have a better outcome if you engage now in whatever capacity.
Yep. Yep. Well said.
All right, Peggy, my dearest. Thank you as always. Yeah,
All
and
right. Have a great rest of the night, everybody.
bye, guys.